Hello, so we're here in Osaka, Japan, and I guess this is a little bit different than the usual video. By the way, welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics, where we talk about complex spiritual and metaphysical subjects. So I told you I'd be back with more videos, so here I am, and I figure while I'm here in Japan, this might be a good opportunity to talk about a subject that relates a little bit to this culture, which is the topic of group souls slash family souls, soul families, things of this nature. I've had a lot of theories about this topic kind of swirling around in my mind the last couple weeks. What I've theorized is that a whole culture kind of has its own identity. And so in a country like Japan, you can especially notice this. So with Japanese people, very often when you're talking to them, it's kind of like you're not just talking to the individual, but you're also talking to like a little piece of the collective. And so this is very noticeable in this culture. So it's like there's both the individual, but then there's also a kind of collective embodiment that exists as well. So yeah, so it's very noticeable in particular here in Japan, because the culture itself is very much connected to its sort of collectivization. I'm going into a very loud area right now, so let me actually try to get out of this place. This is one of the major mall areas, so very, very busy, very loud. Okay. So this has to do with the kind of like an identity can exist on multiple different levels. So you have the individual identity, you have a family identity, which could be a family you belong to. There could be a community-based identity, so that's like the group of families. Then there could be a cultural slash country type of connection, which would be your entire culture. There could possibly be like a continental type of embodiment. And then lastly, there is kind of the whole global embodiment, which we could say then is humankind itself. So these are all different levels, kind of like one of those Russian dolls. You know those Russian dolls where you have one doll within another doll, and you keep opening them up, and it just keeps getting smaller and smaller. So it's very much like that. And so I think on like a spiritual, cosmic level, this is very noticeable. And we also see this repeating in nature. When we look at nature systems, we look at cells in a body that together constitute like a greater whole. So you see this in nature, and then it seems to also repeat itself. So once again, to come back to the topic of Japan. So probably in this country more than many others, you can feel like kind of a group collective. And so it's very, very noticeable. And sometimes it causes a bit of criticism about the culture, because there is almost too much of a group soul in effect. There's not enough individuality. So this is very much in contrast to, for instance, American society, which puts a lot of emphasis on that individuality. So in America, it's expected to have a kind of separate, kind of have your own thing going on, and whereas it's the opposite here. Although, funny enough, I would say that Americans are very conformist as well in certain areas that we're not even aware of. But this doesn't mean that this is a bad thing, because through this, you have this kind of multifaceted type of society, where generations of building a culture ultimately makes manifest with a kind of a system where everybody you meet is representative of the greater whole, the greater collective. So ultimately, the way this works in relation to group souls is that you could say that the group that you're most connected to represents a greater embodiment of who you are. And we could get really metaphysical and really crazy and say that that embodiment may itself have its own kind of collective identity. So is it possible that the country of Japan has like one, you could almost call it like a deity, like one entity that represents this embodiment of everything you feel and experience when you're in this culture, and it's that singular embodiment that provides the most influence for everybody around it. So when we go into subjects like near-death experiences, when people encounter the so-called light, it does seem like, from what people describe, that they're encountering some kind of a group soul or a group embodiment of their identity. And interestingly enough, it will also sometimes take on the form of a spiritual or holy figure like Jesus or Buddha. And you could possibly argue that a reason that it's able to do this is because specific religious figures often are representative of an entire culture. So, for example, Buddha, could be representative of huge swaths of the Asian population. So whatever this is, when we talk about meeting an embodiment, meeting a group soul, it very much seems to be an element of like the collectivization of that individual, so that you are both an individual, but simultaneously you're a piece of a greater consciousness. So in essence, I mean, this is what we talk about with the group soul. It also connects to a higher self. And I guess the next major point on this topic is the idea that you can connect to your group soul, and this may also be what they call the higher self. So your higher self could very much be the embodiment of not just yourself, but many, many other souls connected to you. Now, one more big point, and I don't want to forget about this. We hear about, like with direct spirit communication, that one individual is part of its kind of a soul family. Oh, it's very, very busy here. I don't know. Hopefully the audio is good enough. You can hear me. I'm just going to turn around and go back this way. So, soul family is basically there's a community-based soul. We call it the oversoul, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 500 maybe different facets of itself. So we hear it described as like facets of a diamond, and so the diamond itself is this one kind of singular entity. And this is kind of like a community or family, or also you can call it a type of group soul. And all of your incarnations are basically little facets of the same diamond. So everybody who incarnates is a separate little facet, but it all belongs to the same individual whole. Now, I believe it was the silver birch who really fleshed this concept out. So the big takeaway point with that, let's go down this alley and see where we go. So the big takeaway point with that is that when you reincarnate, you may very well be just branching off into a different facet, while the you who is you very much stays the same. Now, this isn't to say that the other type of reincarnation doesn't occur. I think it may be possible for the you who is you to end up in a different life. But it certainly seems, based upon some of the more advanced literature, that like reincarnation happens in a group soul embodiment. So you could cross over and you'll still very much be you, while if you decide to reincarnate, all that's happening is a piece of your oversoul is now branching off and creating a new little piece to add to the collection. And then theoretically, at some point, or one of the main goals is for all of the different facets to kind of merge into one sort of what we could call like a greater entity. And to use law of one terminology, this would be the sixth density. So everybody comes together into one unique, one greater soul that now is no longer separated to these different facets and can actually have the power to be anyone else in its family at any time it wants. So this would be like a higher evolved entity, like a very, a very powerful entity. And some esoterists believe that this is sort of our main goal, is to merge back with all of our many different souls in this family soul and become one sort of godlike entity who has the power to go anywhere it wants, do anything it wants, and be connected to everybody that was in its family, now kind of merged back together. And then by doing so, it's sort of like the path to your own godhood in a sense. So is it possible to meet people who are part of that family soul, that group soul? Some people say yes. Sometimes you'll meet somebody who you just have this unmistakable familiarity with, because it turns out that this person is actually a piece of your own consciousness that belongs to your oversoul. But this family soul shouldn't be confused necessarily with like a group soul in a civilization, like we talk about like in this in Japanese culture. So these are two different things. It is a bit confusing. Hopefully maybe I can flesh this idea out more in the future. But anyway, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button to hear more talks about crazy subjects like this. And I think I'm gonna go look for something to eat. But I can't forget that I would say, please go to afterlifetopics.com. Check out the Facebook page. Check out the books, Understanding Life After Death, The Afterlife and Beyond. This is Cyrus Kirkpatrick. Thanks for tuning in. Again, I need to go into one of these little restaurants. Check these fish out. It's so funny because they have like human-like faces. It's so creepy. Anyway, I'll catch you guys next time.